Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Mania. We're taking a look at the X-Plus Diamond Reissue 30cm Gorosaurus figure, based on the 1967 appearance of the character from King Kong Escapes. This is another piece added to my collection in order to build up a Destroy All Monsters lineup, and before anybody says anything, I know, it's the wrong color scheme. The original Gorosaurus X-Plus figure was released in 2008. This Diamond reissue came out in 2014, but there was also a 2011 release in Japan that was actually done up in the 1968 color scheme, which is slightly different, but I honestly don't know enough offhand to tell you exactly where the color differences lie. Being that this is a Diamond reissue, much easier to come by in the United States, I decided that I would be perfectly happy with the King Kong Escapes version rather than tracking down a much rarer figure from Japan. I ended up getting this one off of somebody I believe in the X-Plus collectors group on Facebook. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at him. I just want to say right off the bat that I love the design of Gorosaurus in general. I think he looks like a really cool fictionalized dinosaur. I actually have a big King Kong Escapes poster on my wall depicting King Kong fighting Gorosaurus, and X-Plus captured some great detail here on this figure. First and foremost, I just want to point out the amazing kind of textured detail here on the skin, all the little individually sculpted scales, all the little textures in the scales themselves. If we zoom in here, the eye is really nicely done. You can see the different layers of color going through there, and the deep bags underneath and the crest over top. And then Gorosaurus has some really impressive teeth. You can see all these individually sculpted, very white teeth. He has the pink gums. I originally didn't even think he had a sculpted tongue, but if you look, it's actually in a raised position there in his mouth, almost at the roof of his mouth. Just very, very cool. Great attention to detail there. He also does have the larger fangs that kind of are reminiscent of Anguirus coming down in the front there. The way his lower jaw is shaped, it is actually shaped with indentations where those fangs would stick out the sides. Once again, bringing to life the suit accuracy of this figure and not just somebody sculpting it kind of as they see fit. And as I mentioned before, one of the things I just love about the Gorosaurus design is how dinosaur-like he is. A lot of the other bipedal creatures in Godzilla films have kind of a smallish head, a big bulky body, and they stand fairly upright. Gorosaurus has a very, very large Tyrannosaurus-shaped head here. He has a very thick neck that's almost as big as his head is, and he stands with this great hunched over look. If you come down the back, we can see his line of spikes going down there. The overall top of this body is a darkish grayish green, but in some great paint application that I'm not even really sure how they accomplished it. The low lights throughout all the scales appear to be the tan that he has going on in his chest, and the chest has lower tones of the green on his back. I don't know if this was just very meticulous dry brushing, and if the green on the top is the dry brushing with a tan underbase and they flip-flopped it for the chest or what, but it is a very, very cool color scheme they gave Gorosaurus. And that same thing applies here to the spikes. As they go down the body, they kind of pick up more of that tan color, starting on the sharp edge and then fading into the rest of the spine. The under torso, some more great kind of wrinkled designs in here, really baggy throughout the section. I don't see any eye holes or anything for the actor, but who cares? This is looking for a little Easter egg on the figure. A lot of big wrinkles here you can see, especially here in the midsection where the actor would have been hunched over at the waist. The arms have a great design where the kind of bicep and shoulder are fused into the rest of Gorosaurus's body, so just that forearm sticks out. Then we have his three clawed fingers, both kind of in this attack pose. With a very bulky lower torso, then his big bulky dinosaur legs coming out. They each have kind of a heavy seam there at the knee, but it's not too bad overall. My biggest gripe with this is that the paint job doesn't really line up. So where the joints kind of want to naturally sit, there is a little more tan here on the side of the leg that just goes directly to green once it gets past that knee joint rather than having a nice fade. Same thing's kind of going on this side, though it is done a little bit better. Then we can kind of see the excess material going down here, connecting into the very, very large tail. The feet are also really nicely done with bright yellow claws there coming out of the green. And then he also does have the little heel spike on both legs that looks phenomenal. And I like that this one foot is kind of arching forward, like he's ready to attack. And this back one's more flat on the ground. The tail continues on the great texture of the scales with a tan on the underside with some extra browns thrown in here. You can see all the segmented pieces. And Gorosaurus has a very large tail. Like most of these figures, you do have to heat up the body and then put the tail in. Mine has a gap there that I've never been able to get out of the figure. I need to maybe remove the tail and make sure the kind of flash or the extra area around the base of the tail is shaped right, I guess. But it does seem, because it is a very long tail, it does have a little bit of weight, and it does kind of create that gap in there when gravity takes effect. But I love the shape of the tail here. We kind of have this hard edge going down the side, separating the top and bottom, the green from the tan. The spines coming down the back continue on to the tail, and the tail comes and wraps around. And you can kind of once again see the point where the wire would have been connected to the tail, giving it lift, because beyond that point we can see it starts to droop a little bit, but it does pick back up here at the end for the nice tail spike that Gorosaurus has. For a size comparison, here's Gorosaurus next to Godzilla, and you can see they're in pretty good scale with one another. This is 1968 Godzilla, since I am going for that Destroy All Monsters lineup. That's my primary go-to Godzilla in my collection for X-Plus. And seeing as this Gorosaurus is based on King Kong Escapes, it is kind of sad that we'll probably never get an official release of King Kong from that movie just because of likeness rights, though I think I did see a customizer do one recently that looked pretty darn cool. But if I'm going to be spending big money on a King Kong, I'd rather have the one from King Kong vs. Godzilla rather than the goofier looking King Kong Escapes version. And overall, I think Gorosaurus is one of my favorite X-Plus figures in my collection. I love the pose, I love the design, and I think a lot of it comes down to how much I really do like the design. Gorosaurus is not a character that appeared in a lot of Toho films. He really had cameos in 2 of them. He was never a main character, and he really just never got a ton of screen time. And because of that, it's really cool to have this X-Plus representation of him, to kind of be able to take a better look at him than I was ever able to on film. But besides just being a cool character, X-Plus did a great job. I love the paint job on this figure. Despite my complaint about the transition from the lower legs to the upper legs as far as the paint goes, every other spot in this character just knocks it out of the park. It has this beautiful, detailed paint job that just really brings the character to life and it makes it look incredible. The sculpting is also spot on. All the details are brought out in just meticulous detail. And while I do have some minor complaints with this figure, they may actually be only my figure. There may be a fluke with my example of it right here. So this figure gets a very strong recommend. Even if you're not the world's biggest Gorosaurus fan, if you're picking up some Godzilla characters, this is definitely one I don't think you're going to be disappointed in. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been our Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Mania. Stay tuned for more to come.